K-Drama in Love presents Dear CEO. Park Ji-eun stopped in front of the imposing entrance of the multinational company, her eyes fixed on the tall glass doors. At 25, this was not the path she had envisioned. Since she was little, she had dreamed of owning her own business, leading her own destiny. She had always been brilliant, ambitious, and the best at everything she did. But family debts had cut her dreams short, forcing her to seek a stable job to help her family. With a final sigh of determination, Ji-eun entered the building and presented herself to the receptionist, who guided her to the office of her new boss, for whom she would work as a secretary. They stopped in front of a door marked with a golden plaque that read Lee Tae-hyun, Executive Director. The name sounded vaguely familiar. She couldn't remember from where, but a sense of unease began to form inside her. Ji-eun entered the office with steady steps, though she couldn't help but feel a slight nervousness within. The room was spacious and modern, decorated in a minimalist style. A large window offered a panoramic view of the city, but what caught her attention was the figure standing with his back to her, observing the urban bustle. The man turned slowly as he heard the door close behind her. When their eyes met, Ji-eun felt as if time stood still for a moment. There he was, in front of her, Lee Tae-hyun. The same Lee Tae-hyun with whom she had shared years of fierce competition in high school. The one who had always pushed her to be better, but also the one with whom she had always had a relationship full of tension. The name that had seemed familiar just minutes ago now made complete sense, and the knot in her stomach tightened even more. Tae-hyun recognized her immediately. His eyes, which had initially shown surprise, narrowed slightly as if processing the situation. But before Ji-eun could say anything, he gave a small smile, one she didn't know how to interpret. Park Ji-eun, Tae-hyun said, his voice deep and firm, but with a hint of amazement. I never thought we'd meet again like this. Ji-eun swallowed, trying to maintain her composure. Tae-hyun. I didn't expect you to be the executive director, she replied, still trying to process the surprise. Tae-hyun walked over to his desk with the same confidence she remembered from their school days. The world is a small place, he commented, with that smile that always seemed to challenge her. Ji-eun didn't know what to say. She was in shock. How was it possible that her new boss was precisely him, the boy she had competed with so intensely in the past? And now, after all these years, she was under his command. Tae-hyun looked at her for a moment longer, assessing her, and then added with a slightly mocking tone. It seems that fate has a peculiar sense of humor. Well, Park Ji-eun, welcome to the company. I'm sure we'll get along very well. Ji-eun, still bewildered, could only nod. She knew this job would be a challenge, but she never imagined she would have to face a rival from the past, much less a Tae-hyun who seemed to have changed so much, and yet, so little. Ji-eun left Tae-hyun's office with a mix of emotions she couldn't quite decipher. As she walked to her new desk, in a discreet corner of the same floor, her mind began to fill with memories. She couldn't help it, the reunion with Tae-hyun had opened a door she thought she had closed forever. She still clearly remembered how, in her final year of high school, she and Tae-hyun competed fiercely to be the best at everything. Every exam, every contest, was a battle in which they both threw themselves with all their energy. Ji-eun, always dedicated and meticulous, would stay up late studying to ensure she would beat Tae-hyun, who also worked hard to surpass her. That rivalry reached its peak during a crucial math exam, where the difference between their grades was just 1 point. That small victory for Ji-eun was significant, but it also solidified a silent mutual respect in both of them. They never spoke directly about their competition, but that tension was always present, pushing them to be better. Back in the present, Ji-eun shook her head to clear those memories. Now, with Tae-hyun as her boss, the situation was completely different. The old competitiveness had no place, because in this new power dynamic, Tae-hyun had the ultimate advantage. He was the one in charge. Any attempt to compete would be futile. He had the final say, and she had to find a way to adapt to this new reality. The following days at the office were a whirlwind of work for Ji-eun. Tae-hyun, demanding and perfectionist, expected excellence in every task he assigned her. The pressure was constant, and Ji-eun felt the tension between them due to their shared history and the new power dynamic. Despite the demands, she noticed that Tae-hyun was watching her, evaluating how far she could go. One morning, Tae-hyun approached her desk with an unexpected request. "Ji-eun, I need you to prepare a detailed analysis of this market report," he said, handing her a thick file. "The data is incomplete and contradictory, but I need a clear recommendation by the end of the day." Ji-eun, though nervous, accepted the challenge. She immersed herself in the work, carefully analyzing every piece of data. Finally, she managed to draft a viable recommendation. At the end of the day, she handed the analysis to Tae-hyun, who reviewed it in silence. "Good job, Ji-eun. You've done more than I expected," he said, with a softer tone. Ji-eun, though exhausted, felt a spark of pride. She knew she had passed an important test and had earned a small but significant recognition. In the weeks that followed, the pace in the office intensified, and the workload piled up, pushing Ji-eun to face new challenges under Tae-hyun's demanding supervision. As they spent long hours together, dealing with the increasing pressure, a silent understanding began to form between them, though neither mentioned it. The exhaustion was becoming evident, but spending so much time with Tae-hyun made Ji-eun start to see him in a different light. Something deeper began to emerge. Amidst this frenzy, one particularly difficult night, Tae-hyun broke the routine and suggested an outing that would change the course of their relationship. It was a rainy evening, and the sound of water hitting the windows heightened the tension in the office. Ji-eun, exhausted, was reviewing the final details of the project she had worked so hard on with Tae-hyun. At 8 o'clock, with the office almost empty, Tae-hyun stepped out of his office and approached Ji-eun's desk, surprising her that he was still there. "Ji-eun, it's late, and it looks like we've both had a long day," Tae-hyun said with a soft smile. "Would you like to go out for something to eat? I know a good place nearby, and maybe we can have some soju to relax." Ji-eun looked at him, a little surprised by the invitation, but she nodded. Despite the intensity of the day, the idea of a break, of being able to relax a little, was tempting. "Sure, that sounds good," she replied, gathering her things. They left the building together and walked to a small nearby restaurant, one of those cozy places only the locals knew well. Once seated, they ordered some traditional dishes and a bottle of soju. As they waited, the conversation started with trivial topics but soon shifted to their shared past. "I never thought you'd end up as a secretary, Ji-eun," Tae-hyun said, pouring soju into both of their glasses. "You always said in high school that you wanted to have your own company. What happened to that dream? Weren't you going to open your own chain of cafes?" Ji-eun was silent for a moment, looking at her glass. Talking about her unfulfilled dreams was always difficult for her, but the relaxed atmosphere and Tae-hyun's sincere gaze encouraged her to open up. "That was the plan," Ji-eun said with a melancholic smile. "I wanted to open a chain of cafes with a unique concept, something that combined modern style with a traditional Korean touch. After high school, I even participated in a startup competition, hoping to get investors for my project. I put everything I had into that presentation, believing it would be the opportunity one needed. But it didn't go as expected. I didn't get the funding, and my family's debts started piling up. I had to prioritize other things and find a more stable job to help pay the bills. And here I am, years later, working as a secretary." Tae-hyun watched her in silence as she spoke, his expression softening with a mix of understanding and respect. Hearing about the difficulties Ji-eun had faced made him see her in a new light. "I'm sorry you had to give up your dream," Tae-hyun said softly. "I never would have imagined it. I always thought you were the kind of person who achieved everything, no matter what. Ji-eun looked at him, her eyes shining with a mix of emotions. Life has strange ways of surprising us, she replied, raising her soju glass. But I don't regret what I did for my family. They toasted in silence, and as they drank, Tae-hyun couldn't stop looking at her, admiring the strength she didn't show openly but clearly carried within. The silence that followed was charged with something different, something deeper. Tae-hyun lowered his glass and looked directly into her eyes. You know, Ji-eun, you always impressed me in high school. That determination, that energy. He paused, as if deciding whether he should continue. Actually, back then, I liked you. More than I was willing to admit. The words fell onto the table like an unexpected revelation. Ji-eun froze, the glass in her hand, unable to process what she had just heard. Tae-hyun, her fiercest rival, was confessing that he had had feelings for her in the past. What? She managed to say, her voice barely a whisper, as her heart began to beat faster. Tae-hyun smiled slightly, as if trying to ease the tension he had created. Yes, but I think at the time I was too proud and competitive to admit it. Besides, we were both too focused on outdoing each other. Ji-eun didn't know what to say. The atmosphere between them was still heavy, full of unspoken words and emotions that both seemed to be holding back. Their eyes met, and for what felt like eternal seconds, they remained silent, caught in a whirlwind of feelings that neither dared to fully express. Finally, Tae-hyun broke eye contact and looked at his empty glass. The moment of vulnerability passed as quickly as it had arrived, and the professional barrier rose between them once more. It's better if we go, he said, returning to his usual tone. Tomorrow will be another long day. Ji-eun nodded slowly, still trying to process what had just happened. As they got up to leave, they both knew that the night had changed something in their relationship, though neither was willing to admit what that change really meant. Something had shifted, and though they tried to return to their usual routine, they knew they wouldn't be able to ignore what had been left unsaid for long. The following weeks were a whirlwind of work and contained emotions for Ji-eun and Tae-hyun as they continued working side by side on the demanding project that had taken over their lives. Though they tried to keep their relationship strictly professional, the tension between them was undeniable, and the shared silences spoke more than they were willing to admit. As the project neared completion, the frantic pace began to slow, and Ji-eun started to reclaim some of her personal time, noticing that something within her had changed. She was beginning to feel something for Tae-hyun. One day, while organizing files at her desk, Ji-eun received an unexpected message from a foundation for new projects. They had rediscovered her proposal for a chain of cafes and wanted to invest in it. Ji-eun's heart raced. The opportunity she had long dreamed of and thought lost was now within reach. As she processed the news, she realized how ironic the timing was. Just when she had accepted her new life and her growing feelings for Tae-hyun, fate offered her a second chance to revive her old dream. After receiving the message from the foundation, Ji-eun quickly arranged a meeting with the team interested in her project. The meeting was more than promising. The foundation members expressed great enthusiasm for her idea of a cafe chain that combined modernity with traditional Korean elements. They were willing to invest and support her every step of the way, from concept development to the opening of the first stores. Ji-eun's passion for her project resurfaced with intensity, and for the first time in a long while, she felt that her dream was within her grasp. After carefully considering the proposal and discussing it with her family, Ji-eun made a decision. She knew it was a risk, but she also knew it was a unique opportunity, one she couldn't pass up. She decided to leave her job as a secretary and dedicate herself fully to making her dream a reality. With her decision made, Ji-eun went to Tae-hyun's office to inform him. As she entered, Tae-hyun looked up from his documents, meeting Ji-eun's determined but emotional gaze. I've decided to accept the foundation's offer for my cafe project, and I'm going to leave the company to devote myself fully to my dream, Ji-eun said, her voice firm yet tinged with emotion. Tae-hyun looked at her in silence, his expression hard to read. Finally, he gave a slight smile. "I'm glad you're moving forward with your dream. I wish you the best, Ji-eun." He extended his hand, and she, a bit surprised by his restrained reaction, accepted it. A brief but meaningful silence filled the room before Tae-hyun added, "I hope everything works out for you." Ji-eun nodded, grateful, but as she left the office, she couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions. She knew she was taking a big step toward her future, but she also knew she would miss Tae-hyun, just when she had started to accept her feelings for him. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity for Ji-eun. Fully immersed in her project, every day was a new opportunity to move closer to realizing her dream. She had rented a small office where she worked with her newly formed team, planning every detail of what would become her cafe chain. The passion she felt for her project kept her motivated, and the excitement of building something of her own made her forget the fatigue. One day, as she walked to her office, her mind occupied with the day's tasks, something caught her attention. On the corner of the street, just a few meters from her building, she saw one of the people who had attended her meetings at the foundation. They were talking to someone who seemed eerily familiar. As she got a little closer, she realized that the someone was none other than Tae-hyun, her former boss. Ji-eun's heart skipped a beat. Seeing Tae-hyun talking to someone from the foundation left her bewildered. She tried not to be seen, but couldn't help feeling a mix of surprise and curiosity. What was Tae-hyun doing there, talking to someone from the foundation that had decided to invest in her project? What connection could there be between them? Unable to shake the image from her mind, Ji-eun decided to investigate. That same night, after an exhausting day at the office, she sat in front of her computer and began searching for information about the foundation. As she delved deeper, her surprise grew. She discovered that the foundation that had decided to invest in her project was largely funded by the company she had worked for, the same one led by Tae-hyun. The revelation hit her like a cold shower. Ji-eun stared at the screen, trying to process what she had just discovered. Everything began to make sense: the speed with which the foundation had decided to support her, the interest in her project after so many years. And now, knowing that Tae-hyun was somehow behind all of it, questions began to pile up in her mind. Had Tae-hyun been the one to push the foundation to invest in her? Why hadn't he told her anything? Had he been watching her progress all this time without her knowing? The mix of emotions she felt was overwhelming: gratitude, confusion, and a sense that something deeper was happening. The next day, Ji-eun couldn't focus on anything other than the revelation she had uncovered the night before. Anxiety and curiosity consumed her, and she knew there was only one way to calm her mind: confront Tae-hyun directly. Determined, she waited until the end of the day to head to the office where she had worked for so many weeks. When she arrived, Tae-hyun greeted her with a slight surprise in his expression but maintained his usual composure. "Ji-eun, what are you doing here?" he asked, looking up from his desk. "I need to talk to you," Ji-eun replied bluntly. "What I discovered last night can't wait. I want to know the truth about the foundation that invested in my project. Are you behind all of this?" Tae-hyun looked at her in silence for a moment, then slowly nodded. "Let's talk after work. Meet me at the same bar as last time." Hours later, Ji-eun found herself walking to the small bar where she had shared so many unresolved emotions with Tae-hyun weeks earlier. When she arrived, she found him already seated at a table with 2 glasses of soju. She sat down across from him, never taking her eyes off him, waiting for the answers she desperately needed. Tae-hyun took a sip from his glass before beginning to speak. "Yes, Ji-eun. It was me who pushed the foundation to invest in your project," he said calmly, watching her reaction. "I knew you had incredible talent and deserved that opportunity. I couldn't let that dream fade without doing something about it." Ji-eun looked at him, still incredulous, her emotions a tangled mix. "But why me, Tae-hyun? Why did you choose to help me out of all the people you could have supported?" she asked, the confusion evident in her voice. Tae-hyun met her gaze intensely, his eyes shining with a sincerity she hadn't seen before. "Do you remember when I told you that in high school I liked you, but at the time, I was too proud and competitive to admit it?" he began, his voice soft but firm. "Well, that's not the case anymore. Now I'm telling you without any reservations, Ji-eun. I like you, and there's no pride or competitiveness that will stop me from confessing that. I wanted to give you that opportunity because I believe in you, not just as a professional, but as the incredible person you've always been." Ji-eun was silent for a moment, taking in his words. But this time, instead of feeling overwhelmed or confused, she felt a wave of clarity. She set her glass down on the table, looking him directly in the eyes, and made a decision. "Tae-hyun, I need to be honest with you too," she said, her voice steady even as her heart raced. "These weeks working with you have been enough to open my heart. I realized that I wasn't just concerned with your professional opinion, I also started to feel something more for you. And if I'm honest, in high school, there was always a part of me that felt some attraction towards you. I guess our rivalry and pride hid those feelings, but now I can't keep ignoring them." Ji-eun's confession left Tae-hyun speechless for a moment. He hadn't expected her to respond that way, much less that she had shared similar feelings. A sincere smile, full of relief and happiness, spread across his face. "Ji-eun," he said softly, his eyes shining with an emotion he couldn't hide. "You have no idea how much it means to me to hear you say that." They looked at each other in silence, knowing that what they had just shared would change everything between them. The tension that had grown over those weeks finally released, and instead of confusion or doubt, they felt a deep, sincere connection. Tae-hyun extended his hand to Ji-eun, not as a farewell, but as a gesture of support and affection. She took it without hesitation, feeling how all the barriers they had built over the years finally crumbled. "Let's make this project incredible, together," Tae-hyun said, his voice soft but determined. Ji-eun nodded, her smile reflecting both her determination and the beginning of something new between them. They didn't know exactly what the future held, but they were both sure of one thing: they wanted to face whatever came, together. After their conversation at the bar, Ji-eun and Tae-hyun left together, the atmosphere between them charged with newly discovered emotions. The night was cool and quiet, and they walked side by side, enjoying the shared silence, their hearts beating in unison, knowing that something profound had changed. Ever the gentleman, Tae-hyun insisted on walking Ji-eun home. As they approached the door of her apartment, the tension between them, which had been palpable for weeks, had transformed into a mix of tenderness and desire. When they reached the door, Ji-eun turned to him, her eyes reflecting the soft streetlight and something more, something that spoke of shared feelings and an uncertain but exciting future. Without saying a word, Tae-hyun lifted his hand and gently caressed her cheek, a gesture full of affection and promises. "Thank you for walking me home," Ji-eun whispered, her eyes locked on his. "I couldn't let you go alone after everything we talked about," Tae-hyun responded, stepping a little closer. There was a moment of pause where they simply looked into each other's eyes, and then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, Tae-hyun leaned in and kissed her. The kiss was soft, filled with emotions that had been held back for so long, and Ji-eun responded with the same intensity, feeling their hearts finally connect without barriers. When they pulled away, their breaths were unsteady, and Ji-eun looked at him with a mix of shyness and determination. "Would you like to come in?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Tae-hyun nodded, no words needed. They entered the apartment together, and the cozy atmosphere of the place enveloped them. Ji-eun led him by the hand to her living room, where the intimacy of the situation became even more palpable. They looked at each other for a few more moments, their hearts beating in unison, knowing they were about to cross a new threshold in their relationship. With a tenderness that reflected the respect and affection they felt for each other, Tae-hyun drew her close, and they kissed again, this time with more depth, letting their emotions speak for them. As they kissed, physical barriers began to fade slowly, and the clothes that separated them fell to the floor, unhurriedly, guided only by the desire to be closer. They moved towards the bedroom, where they gave in to the passion and connection they had discovered that night. What followed was a moment of love and tenderness, where they gave themselves to each other with open hearts, allowing their feelings to flow freely. It was an encounter that expressed not just physical desire but also the deep emotional connection they had built over time. Afterward, they stayed together, embraced in the darkness, with the certainty that they had begun something new, something neither of them had planned but that they both knew they wanted to continue exploring. Epilogue. Months after leaving the company, Ji-eun found herself at the grand opening of her first cafe. The space, designed with a perfect blend of modernity and Korean tradition, was filled with curious and enthusiastic customers. It was the culmination of all her hard work and dedication, a dream come true that she could now see and touch. As she watched people enjoy the atmosphere she had created, she couldn't help but reflect on how much her life had changed since she decided to follow her dream. The late nights of hard work, the tough decisions, and the moments of doubt seemed distant now as she saw her vision come to life. Gone were the days of high school, when her rivalry with Tae-hyun seemed to be the only thing that connected them. Now, she understood that competition had only been the surface of something deeper, something they had both ignored for years. Despite her success, she couldn't forget the influence Tae-hyun had had on her life. More than a demanding boss, he had been the catalyst that pushed her to pursue what she truly wanted. A soft chime at the cafe door caught her attention, and when she turned, she saw Tae-hyun enter. Her heart skipped a beat. He approached with a smile, and without a word, handed her a small potted plant. "For your new beginning," he said simply. Ji-eun took the plant, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. As they shared a smile, she knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where they would find support and love in each other's arms, leaving behind the days of rivalry and facing whatever the future had in store for them together. If you enjoyed this K-drama, subscribe to K-Dramas in Love, give it a like, comment, and share this video.